Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Best of Pedalshift. On this edition, we go all the way back to May 2018 for a delightful discussion with Ella Embree as she was on the evening before her enormous adventure inspired by Lael Wilcox to bicycle tour 1,000 miles around her home state of Alaska, some of which on a tandem. That's the fun part. On this episode, we find out all about what inspired her, what her plans were, and much, much more. And of course, spoiler alert, you can find out whether or not she made this 1,000-mile goal by checking out her blog, which I mentioned in the show notes. This is a really true best of Pedalshift. Enjoy. Ella Embree is a born and bred Alaskan with a big sense of adventure. Her blog, Thrive Outside, chronicles her adventures in and out of the last frontier. Recently, Ella was inspired by Lael Wilcox to tackle a new adventure, and that's bicycling 1,000 miles around her home state. And this was a really fun interview, and there's just so much good energy coming off of Ella. I'm really excited to share this with you. Hi, Ella, and welcome to the Pedalshift Project.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is going to be an adventure.
I know. It's so exciting. When you reached out, I was like, oh, this sounds like a great ride. So let me share with the listeners what you're doing. You're planning on doing 1,000 miles of cycling within the state of Alaska. Can you tell me what the ride's going to look like, especially for folks who aren't familiar with the state and its enormity and all of the cool things that you're going to be able to see during this ride?
Yeah. So what happened is, as I was formulating the ride, I just got more and more excited on the various places to go. There is 2,400 miles in this little island at the southeast called Prince of Wales Island, and there's roads in Nome, and I was planning to go to really remote areas, but instead, we decided to kind of anchor from Anchorage and ride rides from sea to shining sea. So first, we're going to start in Anchorage and ride to Homer. Homer is 237 miles away, and there's only 1,024 miles of interstate, what they call our highways, so we have to go a little bit extended. So that's going to be our first portion from Homer to Anchorage. And then from there, we'll go Anchorage to Valdez, which is a little bit longer journey. There's portions that we have friends along the way, but it's a very scenic waterfalls, glaciers on the side of the road. But there's also a really famous ride here in Alaska called the Fireweed that does it. But we're going to do it on touring, so take it a little easier and enjoy our ride. The next two portions of the ride, even though I was born and raised here in Alaska, I've never actually even stepped foot on the road. It is the Denali Highway. That's from Paxton to Cantwell. And that is 133 miles, mostly gravel, and we're going to do that over the 4th of July and ride from one end to the other. But that's supposed to have amazing views, of course, some pretty iffy roads, but there's not a lot of support, so we're actually having friends camp alongside with us, so that's going to be fun to meet up with them because it's the 4th of July. And then the last one at the end of July, we're flying from Anchorage to Prudhoe Bay, which is at the top of where the Arctic, as far as you could go north, and above the Arctic Circle. And we're going to take our bikes on the plane and then put together our bikes and then bike down to the Arctic Circle. And that's called the Dalton Highway, or I don't know, they called it the Hall Road. And that's 301 miles mostly. I mean, we can go further if we can, but I think it's 230 miles of absolutely zero service, no cell service, no gas stations, no support. I mean, we are just out in the wilderness. We'll probably, I've never been on that road either, but I would love to see that part of Alaska. So that's our journey. And, but we're doing it in different legs throughout the summer.
Wow. What a great adventure. I'm just sort of like looking at the map of Alaska, and I'll have that in the show notes as well for people to look. I mean, What an amazing way to see the state. And you're born and bred Alaskan, it sounds like. So it's even hitting places that you haven't been to. The Dalton is the part that I, at least from a bike touring perspective, I'm most familiar with, because a buddy of mine, Mysterious James, for those who listen to the show, did that ride and had just a blast. I'm curious. It sounds like there's a mix of gravel and a mix of pavement as well.
Right.
I know you're sort of new to the bike touring element of all of this, but what's your mindset with all this kind of mixed surface? And have you given any thought, like different tires, how you're attacking these mixed surfaces?
That's a great question. I guess we'll know more at the end, but what I have resorted to is my main bike when I'm doing the haul road and the Denali Highway with the mixed surfaces is a long haul trucker, and it has a little wider tire. And it's a hardtail. There's no shocks or anything, but we're just going to go with that. When I first started my training out, I got the bike about a month ago and we started training. I mean, there's little tiny portions that I've been on gravel and it does pretty good. I went up to, Palmer, Alaska, and there's a, road that goes back to, there's 3 beautiful lakes and, a shooting range, and there's some neat hikes back there. And I went to the end of Mod Road, and it's all gravel, and it handled really well. So we're just going to go with that. If we need to change things up, I guess we'll do it the next time. But when you're out there, you're out there. So I don't know how wise that is, but we'll see how it goes.
It's all about adventure, which I think is sort of, it's not your technical middle name, but it feels like it's really ingrained in you just based on what I've read in your blog and whatnot.
Yeah.
And just to back up, I want to make sure everybody knows, you said that you've ridden no more than 25 miles in any given clip before you started all of this training. So this is all really new to you.
This is so new. I think I'm up to 28 at one time. Maybe one of my training rides got up to 30. But I have done mountain biking in the past, so I know a little bit of the technical aspects of that, but never longer than 25 miles. And that one 25 miles was like a paved bike path with ice cream at the end. So this,
you could still do that, by the way. Ice cream at the end is always okay.
The problem is we are about to take off tomorrow, but I was like, oh, there's no services for the whole day. I mean, I'm like, okay, well, we can do it. We can bring our food. No, but what happened was when I found out about just the opportunity to tour through a competition, and I researched it, and I was like, oh, it's kind of like backpacking, but on a bike. And I love backpacking, and I've done, 3 or 4, I think the longest is 4-day backpacking trips out in the wilderness. And so I'm used to taking little gear, refueling, getting water. And I'm like, but now I just get to go see things further and go farther than I ever been before. And I like going fast. Actually, I started biking on a road bike just 2 years ago because somebody gave me a challenge. I think I like challenges. And they were like, hey, you should try this thing called Pocket Full of Posies, and it's a women's bike race for newbies. And I'm like, oh, sure. And I've never ridden a road bike at all. And the first thing was a hill climb. And I was like, I usually drive my car to a top of a hill, and then I start my bike, on the flat bike path. And the first thing was a competition to go straight up the thing called Potter's Marsh, which is a switchback trail. And I just was laughing the whole way up. I'm like, okay, so you can ride up a hill. I mean, so I just love the challenge of, this bike can go wherever you want it to go. And so yeah, this will be a new experience. We decided we have a tandem. And so we decided, hey, the first trip is all paved. Why don't we take the tandem to Homer. So that's what we're doing tomorrow.
I want to hear more about that because I've seen people tour on tandems and ridden sort of alongside folks, but I've never ridden one myself. What's the experience like? Are you? I know that there's a technical term for the person in the front and the person in the back. Where do you tend to be? And tell me more about the experience of just riding it, especially at distance.
Well, the person in the front is called the captain, and I am the stoker, which that's me, and I'm in the back. I really appreciate the view. It is my husband's backside.
There you go.
I like playing back, but I get a look left and right. I can take pictures. He thinks I do a lot more than what I'm really supposed to be doing, but I have a lot of fun in the back, and I trust him. He knows how to brake. He's done bike touring. He did a big tour when he first got out of college. I have never done it, but he tells me stories before Ella days. And we just enjoy the conversation that we have with one another because, when you're on two separate bikes, especially if you're by road noise or anything, you can't really talk sometimes. So we're just kind of in this back and forth conversation. We talk about the future. We talk about what's going on right around us. I'm telling him, hey, there's a car back, So there's this kind of a fun partnership he's my best friend. So it's kind of experiencing life together. A lot of people, as soon as I mention the word tandem and they're married or something, I'm like, hey, or even dating, I'm like, hey, you can borrow a tandem. It's like, no, do you want us to stay married? So there's definitely a good partnership, good communication has to happen, and a lot of trust. So the captain, the stoker, is how it's laid out, and I pretend I have control in the back, so sometimes I do squeeze like it's time to break now, and nothing happens, but it's just all, he gets all the controls, and I just get the view.
Have you ever talked about the possibility of switching roles, even for a little bit, or are you very baked into being a stoker? Are you a born stoker?
You know what,
do you have captain ambitions, maybe? How's that sound? Actually,
I've done it with other, like a girlfriend will come over and I'll be in the front. I think it just works better that way for us. He's just really good at timing, when to switch gears and, navigating the road. Sometimes, I don't know, we probably could. I just haven't. I enjoy where I'm at.
You like being a stoker. That's good.
Yeah. And I like feeling like he's like, wow, when you're pedaling up a hill or something, you can feel like, hey, you have to put more energy and you have to put more power in each of your strokes. And he's like, wow, that was really fun. And he's like, I was barely working. I'm like, okay. So I am contributing to this journey. So
you are, and he'll be joining you on single bikes in other portions of this ride.
Right.
But for this first part, you've got the panniers and you've got all the other types of things for the tandem. What are the types of things that you're going to be bringing along? Because it sounds like that there's, at least on this first day, I know that there's no services, I guess, until the end of the day. But like, what kinds of things are you bringing along for this? And how did you kind of pull all these things together? Like, what were your resources for all that kind of stuff?
Thankfully, you have a great podcast, and we've been, I've been listening and stuff, finding what should you take, what shouldn't you take. This, on the tandem, we have panniers for the back. Our front racks, we were going to put stuff on the front, but the racks that we ordered, things in Alaska are a little limited, so you have to order online, blah, blah, blah. It didn't work out to have front racks, so we only have the back racks. So we are limited of what we can bring. The most essential for this first portion is right along, this is one of the most beautiful places in Alaska. It's Turnagain Arm. It's on the way out of Anchorage, heading towards Girdwood, and then we'll end up at near Portage, which there's glaciers all around. We'll camp there. And but it can be very windy. So we're going to try to start early in the morning before, with the glaciers, it kind of heats up in the inversion of the wind, and it just kind of sucks the same way by the end of the day. And so wind protection is probably the most. I've noticed that on our training rides, my hands gets pretty cold, and so I'll have various types of gloves, maybe even put a chemical hand warmer in for that portion. Hopefully it won't be raining. We'll have our rain gear. But this has been an interesting journey because we're doing it in Alaska. There's people, we'll talk to people that are like, hey, I'll camp with you. I'll go there. And so we have actual friends that are going to be setting up our camp. So all we have to do is roll in. So we don't have to bring our tent or a sleeping bag on the first night. And this Homer trip is the only one that we're kind of taking advantage of because it is along the highway. So we have a friend that lives in Cooper Landing that we're going to stay at. And the next one, through listening to podcasts, I've heard about warm showers. So I was like, well, what's that? So I looked on warm showers, and sure enough, there's a place in Soldotna and a fellow writer that is super excited, going to have a meal for us. And so we're trying everything out new on this time, but this is the most supported in a sense because we are right alongside the highway.
Especially since this is sort of your first big tour, that seems like the best way to do it because you do have that kind of support. So if something does go south, you've got support that's around you. I think that's a really great idea. And also having a good meal at the end of the day is really helpful from my experience for sure. Hey, I know that when it's windy out, this isn't an issue, but the one thing I always hear about Alaska and cycling in Alaska is dealing with mosquitoes. How are you planning on dealing with that when the winds aren't so windy and the mosquitoes are more, shall we say, attacky?
Thankfully, we are early. So the mosquitoes, the first ones that come out, I call them like slow, like they're like, they kind of come out and they're just kind of, they're very slow. They're very big. There's 27 different types of mosquitoes in Alaska.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. How exciting are we? It's not just that they're different sizes. They're actually different types of mosquitoes. But thankfully, of course, they're probably going to come out as soon as we start the tour. I've talked to other people that have toured in Alaska, and they just recommend putting on a head net. That's going to be more of an issue from the Prudhoe Bay down or the Denali Highway, definitely, because, it's on more rural areas and it's interior. And so interior, once you get, near lakes or they can be just a total bother. You do have to close your mouth. Sometimes I have 2 bugs already. I don't know how other cyclists get around that, but I'm so excited. I'm smiling. I'm like, oh, there's a bug. Okay, can't smile. Keep your mouth closed. But I think, just having a really small head net that you put over your head is crucial when it's like really swarming and, when you stop riding. So we'll find out. I'll let you know how bad it was. But right now I'm here. I'm in Anchorage right now, and I've been to, I think, 7 picnics in the last 7 days, barbecues, and there hasn't been a single mosquito.
Well, maybe this will be the year where there will be no mosquitoes in the state of Alaska, and you'll be fine. But something tells me that you're better off to be prepared for the otherwise.
Yeah.
Other than bringing along that head net and things like that, do you have any other types of gear that you're bringing along that you feel like might be a little more Alaska specific? Because I think that your experience backpacking there probably is going to be a huge help, almost more important than somebody who comes to Alaska intending to bicycle tour, who has bicycle touring experience but no Alaska experience.
To get warm as soon as you're done, because you're working energy when you're cycling. It's similar to hiking. You're generating heat. But as soon as you get done, I think most essential that I've kind of figured out and I've noticed even on my training rides is get warm as soon as you can. So that's a wool hat, warm gloves, take off what you wore beforehand to put all dry stuff on just to keep your body core warm. we have those little, those hand warmers or toe warmers. I usually keep them by my chest and put it by my cell phone because I run and ski during the winter to keep my cell phone warm, and just always have, in case my hands get cold, I'll put them in my gloves to keep my hands warm. I think those are just the layers, the wool hat, a light puffy jacket that I can put on real quick. And I think the layers are very essential. We always carry bear spray, and that's the spray that you use. There have been, and I keep it close to my body, not in a cup holder or something. So it's on like a harness right next to my body, so you can access it immediately. So bear spray is good. When we're in places with no services, we're actually going to have a bear canister to carry our food in. It's a plastic hard thing that protects it from, of course, rain and elements, but it also, the bears can't get our food, because if we don't have food and we're way out in the middle of nowhere, that's not good. So, if the bear attacks and eats all your food, your trip's over. So we're going to keep our food in there, and then just learning how to eat at one spot and then bike a little further and then camp. You don't eat where you camp. That's just a backpacking, rule of thumb when you're in bear country. And I did see my first black bear driving back from Palmer to Anchorage, and it was right alongside the road where I did a time trial a couple years back. And I was like, oh, that's a big bear right there.
Mental note.
Hey, remember, they're everywhere. So I think those are the thing. I would say we are not assuming we're summer riding, even though the sun is hitting my face right now. So we are bringing our shoe covers, our insulated shoe covers for our feet, to ward off the wind, and if it, for chance it rains, because it likes to rain here. So those are the things I think I'm bringing. I can't think of anything else more specific. I do believe in bringing a little bit of sunscreen, because I have gone backpacking in Alaska. We don't have to worry about headlights because the sun's always out. But what happens when you're outside for because the sun doesn't go down until, I think it's going down at about 11 o'clock now, but not really. It's just kind of dusky. So you have a longer sun exposure. So you actually can get really burned if the sun, even on a cloudy day. So I am bringing sunscreen for my nose and my ears, just because that will be exposed.
That's funny. I never really thought about that you had, with the extended daylight hours, that you're exposed to more sunlight, and therefore there's an extended chance for sunburn. I never even really thought about that. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's why our vegetables grow really well, is because we're, even though our summer's short, we just have so much photosynthesis and so much growing because the sun doesn't go down, it keeps growing,
Yeah, and a short season, so it's sort of like pack it all in, people,
Exactly. And that's pretty much our mentality as Alaskans. It's like, summertime, we are going to cover this many miles and go to this many places. It's kind of like pack it all in while you have it.
Exactly. And so, you were also we were talking before we started recording about, run-ins with moose and other things. Talk a little bit more about your interactions with wildlife that you think you're going to be having, especially for those of us in the lower 48 or outside of the States who, this is all just this magical National Geographic thing. But for you, it's kind of everyday thing. It's like, oh, look, it's a moose.
Yeah, it becomes, thankfully, some people can get really like, oh, whatever, but I get excited all the time. So I ride my bike because I'm training. I've just been biking around the city. Anchorage is so bike friendly. So I've biked, there's this little trail right behind my house, and I was biking on my way to church. And of course there's a red fox just lapping into the little creek. And I was like, oh, isn't that adorable? But yesterday, within the, about 5 minutes, maybe a mile and a half, very short distance. We're going around the city, and there's a moose, and one's laying down, and that's so cute, and it's on the side of the road. And another moose was very alert and very excited because these kids were playing Nerf guns, and another in their backyard, and the moose was just like, what's going on over there? And he was very curious. I was like, interesting. But the funniest part, we were coming around the corner, and we were on one side of the road, and we're like, we should get to the other side. There was a bike path on both sides of the road, which is a rare thing in Alaska. You usually just ride where you can, but in Anchorage, this new section had a bike path, and so we were on the road about to go on the bike path, but there's a moose trotting down the road. I don't know if he just got spooked or something, but right towards us. But then he saw us, and I guess our big yellow tandem, he saw us and then just veered off into the woods. And I'm like, okay, so we'll counter wildlife. I love just numbering how many animals we see on a ride. Snowshoe hares are really popular these days because I guess they go in cycles between the hares and the wolves. I did see two wolves when I was out hiking just outside of Anchorage. And that was my first time ever seeing wolves, but I'm really, really super excited. I went to Nome for my first time and got to see wild muskox. And I had to hike way up into the mountains to see them, but I guess on the Dalton Highway, they're just roaming. So I'm excited to see muskox and hopefully some caribou. I've seen caribou a few times, but they're more interior, and that's the Dalton Highway. I'll see them. Brown bears and black bears. Black bears are mostly around Anchorage, but I don't really want to see a brown bear, but if we do, or a grizzly, we are going by the Kenai Peninsula, and that's where they love the salmon and the fish. So, we might see them, but hopefully not. Hopefully we'll have no stories to tell.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yes. For the story purposes, way off on another ridge, and you see it from a long distance, and they don't notice you at all.
That's exactly the way we were hiking on a trail that I've hiked 5 times, but we've never seen any animals. I'm like, wouldn't it be nice if we came across that ridge and the bear's way over there and going the opposite way? And I said that out loud, and I'm not joking. I've hiked the trail 4 years in a row. We come around on a 3-day backpacking trip, and this rock starts moving. And I'm like, no, that's closer than I wanted. But we survived. My husband was like, I'm big. And so, it was pretty exciting. Hopefully none of those adventures. I guess the most scariest part would just be people on their cell phones. I don't know how you guys deal with that when they go off the road. So those are the scary ones. I think I'm more scared of either distracted drivers, because Alaska is so beautiful. Like the first section that I start off tomorrow, we're going on Turnagain Arm, and there's beluga pods that come through that you can see right from the road. So, once you see like a Dall sheep coming down, licking the mineral salts, or a beluga whale, people get distracted when they're driving. So, I would like to see animals, but the most dangerous thing I would say would be distracted drivers.
I hear you. And I think your chances of being injured in that type of a scenario is substantially higher than running into an angry grizzly. But I hope you get neither of those two interactions.
Thank you.
So we're a day out from your ride. You're literally starting tomorrow from when we're recording this. What is the one thing that is exciting you the most about this big adventure tomorrow and beyond? And what's the one thing that feels the most daunting for you?
Well, exciting is just to get on a journey, to go and experience. I've fallen in love with the pace of cycling, and to see the places that I go by all the time in a car. And then when you're on a bike, you're like, oh, look at that. That's really interesting. Alaska is just so mesmerizing as it is from a car or for hiking. I'm just really excited to kind of take that slower route and enjoy seeing Alaska in its just right off the ground. So that I think is the most, and to see if it actually happens, I guess that excites me too, is just like, we found out there's construction and how are we going to get through that? I've called the Department of Transportation. I mean, just overcoming obstacles, being with my best friend. Those are things that excite me. Homer is breathtaking. As soon as I've driven in the car, but you drive, and then all of a sudden you have this big ascent, and then you're right at the sea, and we're going to bike all the way down to the end of this little spit, and you have mountains on both sides and volcanoes and the waves and the sea. So I'm excited to just take it all in, I guess would be a summary of it. The daunting part, I would say, the mountain. There's a couple passes that we have to go through. The first day is pretty flat, but the second day from Portage to Cooper Landing, and then, a couple of the passes, because it's on a tandem, we're heavier, but we're also very fast on the descent. So I think the daunting is, I know we can do this. We've climbed some hills around town. Our brakes haven't been the best, but I would say that would be, I'd love to accomplish that and to be like, okay, that mountain, it's a 7, I think I heard a friend was over for dinner, I think Tuesday, and he had done it, and he's like, yeah, it's a 7-mile climb, and then you don't have to do anything after that, because you just coast, because it's up and down, but you have so much speed. So I'm like, okay, 7 miles? Oh, wow. So I think the pass is going to be the most daunting for me.
That's fascinating that afterwards the ups and downs give you enough momentum to be able to just sort of, as long as you're steering and keeping safe, that's pretty wild.
I know. That's what he said.
It's a roller coaster at that point, and you just have to, it's a roller coaster where you steer.
And I don't even steer, so I just have to.
That's right. Yes. The stoker gets to kick back.
I know. And that's where, I think we're going to have to learn about, layering up or keeping warm, because it is, you are in the top of the pass. And I am, for some reason this summer has not come. Usually May is pretty sunny and it melts everything in the mountains close to us. We have snow all the way down, to our most popular hiking spots. So we are still in snow-capped mountains right now. So the pass is definitely clear and the roads are clear. But there's snow everywhere, so it can get cool. So,
well, you might have some of those great pictures of people who are early season cyclists where, you're standing next to these big drifts that are 20 feet tall. So maybe you'll get a few pictures of that on that pass.
Oh, that would be awesome. That would be super fun.
Well, I look forward to seeing them. And I look forward also to passing along. Where can people learn more about your ride? And are you planning on posting stuff? What's sort of your plans for that?
Yeah. Well, we started a blog a couple years back it's called thriveoutside.blogspot.com. And me and my girlfriend started it because we would talk about hiking and people were like, I just don't know where to go. And women were very scared about bears and different issues. And so we just wanted people to thrive outside. And so that's where it mostly is about hiking, but we have turned it over because there's lots of things to thrive outside. You can ski, you can bike. And so we put information about this journey, this 1,000-mile journey on there. And also I tend to like to be in the moment. So without social media, without posting. So what I'm planning to do, because I'm doing this in the 4 different sections, I'm planning to take photos, do some videos and stuff, and then before the next ride, post them all, and then go on the next ride. So I can really not be concerned about uploading stuff, especially in Alaska, that you have to go. There's limited access to Wi-Fi. So I'm going to post afterwards, but you can subscribe to Thrive Outside, and they'll send you a little email once I have posted, so you don't have to just hover there. It would be great to hear some questions and give some feedback. So that would be the main way to follow this journey. I am on Instagram, but it's just my personal Instagram account, but it's Ella in Alaska. And so that would be something more personal, but that's a public one that people can go to.
I think that that's the right attitude as well. I mean, especially because connectivity is so limited, but also, just to be in the moment sometimes is a really good thing. And that's something that I struggle with as well, because I try to document all this stuff for folks who listen to the show. But at the same time, hey, this tour is for me a little bit too. So I want to make sure that I set aside times for me to be able to kind of have that unplugged moment. So I think that that's awesome. Ella, I am super excited about your tour. I'm excited about this being kind of a first timer. I love the fact that you're just throwing yourself into it and using, the bits of knowledge that you have from your great experience as an Alaskan and as a backpacker. I think you're going to have such a great time. I'm super excited to hear more about things after all of these segments.
Yeah, thanks for asking questions. And like I said, I'm going to learn along the way, right? I guess that's the only way. That's the best way to learn, right? I read a book. It was pretty funny. When I first started doing my training, I was like, how to cycle. And I read a book about, bicycle safety. And then I actually got on the road. I did so many wrong things. I almost got myself killed the first day I got the bike. And I was turning in the wrong lanes and I was hitting sidewalks. And I'm like, what is going on? And it just took asking people and getting some more advice and going out with people who knew how to ride was so much better than just reading a book. So I guess life is going to teach me some new lessons.
I have to say, my first tour was a supported tour, and it was very, very safe and in a place with a lot of services. And for someone to tackle as their first tour 1,000 miles around the state of Alaska, that's just really awesome. I think it's really cool to see people with these great senses of adventure and jumping both feet first into bicycle touring like this. I'm really excited to hear more about this. And you can see more and read more about Ella's adventures at thriveoutside.blogspot.com. I got a link in the show notes, of course. And she's also Ella in Alaska on Instagram as well. So go check out her pictures there. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedalshift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedalshift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.